This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Get ready to pay more to fill her up. A prominent fuel industry expert warns gas prices are about to take a significant leap. Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan says in about a week, you and I are going to see new all-time records set for highest August fuel prices ever. Right now, gasoline averaging $4.09 a gallon nationwide. That's back where it was in June before the Iran ceasefire was announced. In New York and Pennsylvania, motorists are paying on average about $4.22 a gallon right now. U.S. warplanes launched another wave of airstrikes on Iran overnight. President Trump at the White House.
There's very little they can do about it. It's our turn, but, we got to smack them a little bit.
Fox's Trey Yingst.
12 hours after President Trump warned Iran would get a beating, U.S. forces unleashed heavy airstrikes against the regime. Dozens of targets were hit.
The airstrikes were in retaliation for Iran launching that surprise attack on our forces in Jordan a couple nights ago. Retired Navy Admiral Robert Harward.
At the end of the day, you have to eradicate all their missiles and all their drones so they no longer present a threat to the U.S., our allies, or our assets in the region.
Yesterday, War Secretary Hegseth met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington. Bibi Netanyahu telling reporters afterward,
when you're faced with an attack, what do? Attack back. And now it's time to fight.
Reuters reporting today that China is sending up to 400 shoulder-fired missile launchers to Iran. China is dismissing those reports. President Trump will welcome China's ruler, Xi Jinping, to the White House in September. Now to the war in Ukraine, Europe's largest war since World War II. Russian bombs overnight killed 13 civilians in the former Soviet Republic. Nearly a dozen Ukrainian cities attacked by over 70 missiles and nearly 300 drones. That military campaign so severe that Poland scrambled its fighter jets to secure its airspace. It's a tale of two summers when it comes to our weather.
In the Southwest and the plains, the heat is sweltering.
It's been so hot.
Temperatures as high as 20 degrees above average. Meanwhile, torrential rain is pummeling the Northeast. A powerful storm system stretching from Pennsylvania to Connecticut. Swift-moving waters collapsing buildings and submerging streets. Downpours also flooding upstate New York, where some communities saw more than 10 inches of rain in just 24 hours.
NBC's Ryan Chandler. A vote to confirm Todd Blanche as the nation's next Attorney General canceled in the U.S. Senate. It's because outgoing Republicans John Cornyn and Thom Tillis want written assurances from Blanche that he will not pursue an anti-weaponization fund that would benefit the president's political allies. The chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, Dr. Rand Paul, is threatening to hold another doctor in contempt of Congress. That doctor is the former pandemic point man, Anthony Fauci. It's for Fauci's refusal to answer questions yesterday about his response to COVID. Fauci says he could not answer questions because the senator has it out for him.
The sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars.
Several Republicans on the Homeland Security Committee accused Fauci of saying one thing in public and another in private when it comes to COVID policy and the origins of the virus.
It is a total disgrace what you did to this country.
You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people.
Fauci invoking his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. His lawyer got booted from the chamber for being disruptive. 3 Greek firefighters were killed today, battling wildfires that are ravaging Europe. ABC's Marcus Moore.
We are here in France where crews have been in the process of trying to get ahead of the flames that have been burning, that have already scorched an area 4 times the size of Paris.
The wildfires stretch from the Atlantic coast to the eastern Mediterranean. Those flames driving 300,000 Europeans from their homes beaches and vacation sites in France and Spain. President Trump rolling out his Freedom Haulers initiative today. It's a plan that would put military vets behind the wheels of commercial trucks. This plan comes as the administration pledges to crack down on illegal immigrants who cannot read English from being able to operate big rigs on the nation's highways. Still to come on the Noon Report for a Thursday. Local sheriff likes ICE. Guilty, Your Honor, in Buffalo. And Catholics condemn assisted suicide.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. Clearing skies and a nice end to the work week expected. I'll have complete forecast details coming up in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. Flash flooding yesterday in New York's Hudson Valley and Capital Region decimated entire communities, chased people from their homes, and caused major property damage. Streets are still closed today. Cars are still underwater. Several communities declaring states of emergency. Amy Kirsch and her family had to be rescued by boat from their apartment in Colony outside of Albany. She tells Spectrum News.
It started rising really quickly in our apartment, and I want to say it got to about my waist. The water was just everywhere.
An historic 300-year-old grist mill in Rensselaer County completely collapsed due to the flash flooding that was caused by several days of relentless rain. Breaking news out of Mifflin County, Pennsylvania. Crews there responding to an apartment fire in Lewiston overnight. Residents were seen jumping from the building there on Valley Street, those flames breaking out around 11 p.m. A federal jury in Buffalo took less than 2 hours yesterday to convict Hadi Matar of attacking the Indian-born British author Salman Rushdie with a knife at the Chautauqua Institution on August 12, 2022. U.S. Attorney Michael DiGiacomo.
That day, Mr. Rushdie was about to begin a speech when Mr. Matar came across the stage and viciously attacked him with a knife, causing serious injuries to Mr. Rushdie throughout his body, including the loss of his right eye.
Matar, who's already serving a 25-year sentence on state charges, was convicted of providing material support to a terrorist organization. Prosecutors say he acted as an agent of Iran, which has been trying to assassinate Salman Rushdie ever since the publication of his book, The Satanic Verses, in 1989. The head of the Pennsylvania State Police says Governor Shapiro is facing more threats than any governor in state history. Acting Commissioner Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens adds that the threats against Shapiro are unlike any he's ever seen in his career in law enforcement. A Pennsylvania inmate last week was charged with threatening the governor and First Lady. Last year, the governor and his family survived a firebombing at their home in Harrisburg. Broome County, New York Sheriff Fred Akshar is refusing to end his cooperation with ICE, as he's been ordered to do by the state attorney general and Governor Hochul. The sheriff accuses the governor and AG of putting politics ahead of public safety. He calls the Local Cops Local Crimes Act dangerous.
I think the legality of the new legislation will certainly be challenged. It will be decided by the judiciary, but ultimately we are going to continue to prioritize the public safety of the people who live, work, and are raising their families in this community.
Last week, Attorney General Tish James sent a letter to a dozen law enforcement agencies statewide. They've been ordered to end their cooperation with ICE by August 25th or else. New York Catholics are up in arms over the state's new doctor-assisted suicide law. That takes effect next Wednesday.
We remain vigorously opposed to the bill. We think that it's going to be very dangerous and it's going to represent a seismic shift in healthcare.
Kristen Currens, Director of Government Relations for the New York State Catholic Conference, she says doctors are supposed to save lives, not end them.
People sort of scoff at the slippery slope argument, but all you have to do is look at the facts. You look at Canada, who started out, again, much like us, with a sort of narrower law, and actually assisted suicide is a leading cause of death in Canada.
Catholic healthcare groups are filing suit because of New York's Medical Aid in Dying Act. They argue that law coerces them to provide suicide counseling in violation of their religious beliefs. Pennsylvania health officials think it's a good idea to move up the the start of the school day for high schoolers. UPMC sleep specialist Dr. John Levery says data suggests a direct link between academic performance and proper sleep hygiene.
It was across the board. In every area that was looked at, there were profound improvements that I think are worth the hassle of going through this process.
But Dr. Marcia Stokes with the Harrisburg School District thinks adjusting school start times is more work than it's worth.
There is a lot to do with transportation, and we know that over the past few years, finding bus drivers is sometimes a difficult thing to do. You're affecting daycare arrangements, you're affecting parents going to work.
There is money in this year's Pennsylvania budget that helps districts move up their start time to no earlier than 8:30 a.m. for high schoolers. 42,000 faculty and staff with the State University of New York have just approved a new 5-year contract that includes protections against artificial intelligence. The United University Professions Union represents teachers and healthcare workers at 29 SUNY schools. The entire SUNY system employs about 88,000 workers at 64 campuses. New York Education Commissioner Dr. Betty Rosa has assigned an advisor to look into the latest scandal impacting the state's second largest school district in Buffalo.
There was a request by the mayor and our legislators to really step up and please make your way to Buffalo as quickly as possible.
The former superintendent of the Buffalo School District and a sitting board member, both accused of sexually harassing a district official. The superintendent has resigned after less than a year on the job, but that board member remains on the job today. A Western Pennsylvania man facing fraud charges after cops say thousands of dollars worth of snack food deliveries existed on paper only. Details on that new at noon from Family Life's Brian Query.
Washington, Pennsylvania police allege James Powell created fake delivery invoices for Little Debbie products at several stores, including Shop and Save, Giant Eagle, and Walmart. Investigators say the deliveries never happened, but forged employee signatures allowed the invoices to be processed, earning Powell commission payments. Authorities say the alleged scheme cost more than $17,000, which prosecutors are seeking in restitution. Powell is currently jailed in West Virginia and awaits extradition to face multiple felony charges. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. A mail controversy brewing in western New York. That's mail spelt M-A-I-L. The U.S. Postal Service will no longer deliver the mail to the Whistling Straits neighborhood, a residential housing division in Wheatfield. Now, residents of the Whistling Straits neighborhood are sounding off to WIVB.
This is not right. It makes zero sense to me. Zero. It kind of left me speechless. Why that is so difficult that we have to fight over to get that right.
It just feels so unfair that we just keep getting this ripped out from underneath us. Honestly, consider moving. I don't what's the purpose of being here if we don't have all of the benefits that are available? Why am I going to pay extra to just go and get my mail? It's just, I'm ready to call it quits.
For years, those Whistling Straits residents have been forced to drive to the post office to get their mail. Last month, they started getting delivery to their homes. But this week, the U.S. Postal Service reversed course. It claims the local postmaster lacks the authority to switch the neighborhood to curbside delivery. That delivery will end by the end of August. News north of the border today, Canadians spent nearly $2.5 billion less on visits to the U.S. of A. last year as travel to this country declined by 25%. The slowdown in tourism might have something to do with President Trump's tariffs and his calls for Canada to become our 51st state. Did you know Buffalo has one of the best children's museums in the country? Family Life's Dee Haley.
The Explore and More Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Children's Museum in Buffalo was recently recognized by USA Today as as the 5th best children's museum in the nation. Yesterday, the museum celebrated the accomplishment, some recent renovations, and explained what's yet to come. The first phase of construction began in fall of 2023, and the museum has had security upgrades, new guest services, a gift shop, expansion of the 3rd floor, and more. The next phase will add square footage. The museum will, however, be getting rid of its moving water exhibit at the end of August. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
Thank you very much, Dee. Sports next. We call it the 2-minute drill right here on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, it was a tough loss for the Yankees as they fell to the White Sox 6-5 in extra innings. Edgar Curro singled home the winning run in the bottom of the 12th to give the Pale Hose the victory. And what made the defeat difficult to swallow for New York? They gave up 2 home runs in the 8th inning that allowed Chicago to tie things up. In Queens, the Mets and Braves played a pair and came away with a split. Carson Bench laced a go-ahead RBI double in the 7th inning, and that gave the Mets a 3-2 win in Game 1. In the nightcap, it was too much Chris Sale for the Amazons to handle. The Braves' southpaw struck out 9, allowed just 2 hits over 6 innings. Atlanta won it 1-0. The Phillies got beaten by a pinch hit go-ahead 2-run home run from Griffin Conine in the 8th inning. Philadelphia blew a 6-0 lead and fell to the Marlins 8-6. Trey Turner hit a home run for the Phils. Eduardo Rodriguez dominated the Pirates, going 8 shutout innings as the D-backs knocked off Pittsburgh 3-0. Elsewhere, the Orioles erased a 7-run deficit, came back for a 10-9 win over Detroit in 12. The Cards scored 3 in the 9th to walk it off against the Cubs 3-2. Toronto was a 5-2 winner over the Nats. The Reds fell to Cleveland 6-1. The Dodgers doubled up Seattle 4-2. San Diego 3, Colorado 1. Boston won in 10, 4-2 over the Athletics. Houston handled the Angels 7-4. Kansas City shut out Minnesota 4-0. Tampa Bay also won via the shutout 3-0 over Texas. And the Giants just hammered the Milwaukee Brewers 16-3 the final. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you. And still to come on the Noon Report for our Thursday is China arming Iran, the persecuted church in China, and drier days are ahead. Kev's got that forecast after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stone Street. Well, 'tis typically the season of summer blockbusters, but this year has featured a number of independent and faith-based films that are offering redemptive stories, and they've been performing quite well, both at the box office and via streaming platforms. The question is, are we witnessing a kind of disruption in the film industry? For example, both A Great Awakening and Young Washington were released in theaters nationwide, and both garnered positive reviews. Great Awakening was produced by Sight and Sound Films, a company better known for their live theater locations. Young Washington opened number 2 at the box office on Independence Day and was produced by Wonder Project and distributed by Angel Studios. Neil Harmon, the co-founder and CEO of Angel, had this to say, quote, "Young Washington takes us back when the leaders we now admire were still discovering who they would become. It's a deeply human story about growth, sacrifice, humility, and leadership earned through adversity and preserved by divine providence," end quote. Unlike the new Supergirl movie, which is tanking at the box office, or various AI-generated videos these days, this is a movie about a real hero from real history, something all Americans, especially young ones, can benefit from seeing. Added to the list here should also be Joe LeConte's documentary, Benjamin Rush, the American Revolution's Indispensable Doctor. Along with A Great Awakening, it's among the top 10 most viewed Wonder films on Amazon Prime. Joining in on this American fervor is Hillsdale College, who produced Revolutionary America, which was distributed by Fathom Entertainment and narrated by none other than Tom Selleck. It tells the story of the American Revolution through the experience of Americans during that period. And speaking of Fathom Entertainment, they just recently announced, along with Lionsgate, that the 2004 film The Passion of the Christ, which depicts the 12 hours leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus, will be re-released in theaters this September. And that's in preparation for the sequel, The Resurrection of the Christ, which is scheduled to premiere with Part 1 in May 2027 and Part 2 in May 2028. Now, if there really is a real disruption that's taking place in Hollywood, it's because people seem to want movies that are not only innovative and made with excellence, but are also rooted in reality. Film critic Matt Zoller cites called Young Washington a slam dunk, a modern example of the sort of movie that used to be a permanent asset in Hollywood's studio portfolio, a well-crafted but accessible biopic that respects its audience, and we can always use more of those. Instead, Hollywood has now resorted mostly to re-releasing hits from years past and recycling old stories with an increasingly woke accent in the new version, or just sheer repetition, a seemingly unending flow of sequels and prequels. A recent article in The Atlantic even asked this question: is this the worst ever era of American pop culture? For example, one of the year's top summer films was Toy Story 5. Let that sink in. Now, Christians who are living in this time of what Ross Douthat has called decadence, with no new ideas and very little new innovation, a decadence that has also infected Hollywood, we have a responsibility to consume entertainment differently than our peers. And there's also an opportunity for Christians to produce, and that cannot begin with just the same old addiction to whatever's trendy and new. To paraphrase C.S. Lewis, we don't need more Christian movies, we need more movies written by Christians. We need Christian creativity over every square inch of God's creation, and that certainly includes film. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you much. Outside we go, weather where you live with meteorologist Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast for this afternoon. A fair amount of sunshine across far western New York and western Pennsylvania. Variable cloudiness elsewhere with a stray shower. Even a rumble of thunder in portions of central New York and northeast Pennsylvania. High temperatures this afternoon in the 70s. It'll turn out moonlit tonight. Low temperatures, mid-50s to low 60s. Tomorrow, nice day. Ample sunshine, the high 80. Some sun Saturday, the high in the 80s, but showers and thunder back Saturday night going into Sunday.
All right, Kevin, thank you. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price. Great to have you with us today, Thursday, the 30th of July. Historic rainfall washed out roads and flooded homes throughout New York's Hudson Valley and Capital Region yesterday. What a mess there. Up to 10 inches of rain fell. States of emergency declared in several communities. Reuters reporting today that Iran is set to receive up to 400 handheld missile launchers from China. The shoulder-fired air defense systems, along with Chinese missiles, are said to be worth about $70 million. Iran set to receive the first shipment of those handheld missile launchers within weeks. China denies the claims, calling them completely groundless. U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker.
This is a very concerning report, and obviously China needs to stay out of this fight. It's not their fight, and the United States will pay very close attention if there are already attempted arms transfers from China to Iran.
Overnight, U.S. warplanes bombed dozens of military sites in Iran in retaliation for that surprise attack on our military base in Jordan. President Trump says our military only had minutes to prepare for that attack.
We had 5 rockets shot going 8,500 miles an hour. And all 5 rockets were knocked down to the ground.
This latest escalation coming after Iran broke a ceasefire deal by firing on commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz weeks ago. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez.
The war appears to now be intensifying again throughout the region. Smoke seen rising over a U.S.-owned gas storage tanker in Egypt. Saudi Arabia joining the U.S. attacking Iran-aligned militias in Iraq. Still, President Trump is insisting Iran is ready to make a deal.
Prominent fuel industry expert warns today that gas prices are about to take a significant leap. Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan says in about a week, you and I will be paying the most for fuel in the month of August that we have ever paid. The Prime Minister of Poland says a Russian missile landed in his country. Authorities found a 30-foot crater and scattered debris in a field in eastern Poland following reports of an explosion there. Russian attacks in Ukraine overnight killed more than a dozen civilians. Former pandemic point man Dr. Anthony Fauci could face contempt charges for failing to answer questions before a Senate panel yesterday. He was called to testify about how he handled COVID. Criminal defense attorney Vic Bajaj says the release of the Fauci diaries, though, made his testimony next to impossible.
He owed it to the people to be honest. He had blanket protection. The problem is there were thousands thousands of these entries in the diaries, which was a big problem here because now it put him in a corner. He would either have to affirm he wrote and authored those entries, or he would have to deny. If he denied, that would be perjury.
The pandemic-era Fauci diaries seem to indicate the COVID doc contradicting himself on the origins of COVID and coronavirus protocols. It's been over 50 years, by the way, since the U.S. Senate has voted to hold anyone in contempt. Fauci pleading the fifth more than 100 times during Wednesday's hearing before the Senate Homeland Security Committee. President Trump's pick to lead the Justice Department could be in jeopardy. Last night, the Senate Judiciary Committee postponed a vote on the nomination of Todd Blanche as Attorney General.
The Blanche nomination hit a roadblock after two Republican senators expressed concerns late yesterday that essentially prevented that planned vote today. So the issue is that Senators John Cornyn and Thom Tillis want commitments in writing from the Department of Justice to put an end to the unprecedented so-called anti-weaponization fund that could be used to pay compensation to Trump allies.
That's NBC's Kelly O'Donnell. More than half of U.S. workers cannot cover emergency expenses. More than half. A new poll released today shows 55% of employees do not have enough money in their savings account to cover an unexpected expense of just $500. Over 40% of workers have had to skip medical care, car repairs, and even a meal the past 6 months because of financial strain. You're listening to the Noon Report for Thursday on Family Life.
This is Faith Under Fire. We take you straight to the front lines of religious battlegrounds. I'm your host, Sarah Harnish. With me today, the Vice President, a Voice of the Martyrs, Todd Nettleton. We're talking Christianity in China. Missionaries in China just ran a victory lap after the release of Pastor Ezra Jin, who is imprisoned for nearly 9 months for preaching the gospel and refusing to let the Communist Party in China control his church. Todd, tell me what happened.
Well, this is really a praise the Lord story. Pastor Ezra Jin was released from prison, actually arrived in Los Angeles. His family, his wife and children have already been in the United States, and he arrived in Los Angeles on the morning of July 4th, Independence Day. So, like I say, a huge praise the Lord. Lots of people had prayed for him. It is also a success story for the Trump administration. President Trump specifically raised Pastor Ezra Jin's case when he was with President Xi in Beijing just about a month and a half ago. And so at that time, President Xi said, hey, I'll look into that. Now this pastor is free and allowed to leave China. So a big win. That's all the good news. The bad news is there are still 8 leaders from Pastor Ezra Jin's Zion Church who are in prison in China. All of them have now been charged with fraud and illegal business practices. This follows the pattern we've seen in China over the last 2+ years. Church leaders are not charged with holding illegal religious gatherings. They are not charged with anything related to religion. They're charged with fraud and illegal business practices. And 2 things about that. Number one, it allows the Chinese government to hide what they're doing, because if you or I call the Chinese embassy and say, hey, why are you persecuting these pastors? They will say, oh, no, this has nothing to do with religion. We're protecting consumers. We're cracking down on fraud. You wouldn't want us to allow fraud of our people, would you? And so they're hiding persecution. The other side of the coin, which is also equally nefarious, is it is very difficult for these brothers and sisters to defend themselves in court, because what happens is the government says, well, you were collecting donations for a charity that doesn't exist. And they say, no, we were taking an offering in our church. And they say, well, what church? Show us your paperwork. Show us your bank account. What church are you even talking about? And because the church is not allowed to register, it is not allowed to have a checking account, it is not allowed to legally exist, the government can just keep saying, hey, you were taking donations for a church that doesn't even exist. That's the very definition of fraud. So it is very difficult for these pastors to defend themselves against these charges. And it is very easy for the Chinese government to say, no, we're not persecuting anybody. This is all about financial crime. It has nothing to do with religion.
What happens to somebody who gets arrested for starting a church in China?
They will go to prison, and the pressure against them is very intense. And one of the things, these 8 that are still being held, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Pastor Wang Yi, the founder of another church in China, Early Rain Covenant Church, is currently serving 9 years in prison. So it is certainly within the realm of possibility that all 8 of these pastors could be facing 5 or 6 or 9 or even 10 or 15 years in prison for these so-called illegal business practices. And I just had Bob Fu, the president of China Aid Association, on Voice of the Martyrs Radio. One of the questions I asked him was about the legal process. And I just said, Bob, when the trial starts, is there any hope of justice, or is it's already determined? And he said, oh, no, by the time the trial starts, the decisions are already made. Everything's already locked in place. The trial is just a show to say, look, we had a legal process, we had a trial, and this is what happened. But he said by then the decision is made. And so there really is no chance for these brothers and sisters to have a fair trial or a fair opportunity to defend themselves against these charges.
That's the story of Pastor Ezra Jin in China. You can follow these cases by heading to the Voice of the Martyrs landing page online at persecution.com.
All right, thank you, Sarah, and thanks to Todd Nettleton as well, doing a great work at Voice of the Martyrs. The name of the program, Faith Under Fire. It comes your way every Thursday during the Noon Report or online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and FamilyLife.org. And finally at noon for a Thursday, we are officially in the dog days of summer, and that means you are probably not getting enough sleep at night. Bree Tennis files this report.
According to the Mental Health Foundation, heat interrupts sleep by reducing quality and duration, and that can make you cranky. But lack of sleep for more than 3 days can make you really cranky. We don't want that. The Sleep Foundation says your bedroom should be between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit because cool air helps you fall asleep faster, stay in deep sleep longer, and improves your mood. And everyone will appreciate that. I'm Bree Tennis.
All right, thank you, Bree. And just like that, our time is up. That's our world, the world we live in. Thursday, the 30th of July. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.